Hello, I'm Dr. Chris Parker, and welcome to a Between Seasons episode of the UX Usability Podcast. At the moment, I'm taking a quick break between seasons to recharge, to make connections for the next season, and also to do my job, because I'm an academic at Loughborough University. I've got my teaching, got my research, got my admin, all that amazing stuff we love doing. So just taking a time out to focus on what's important in life before I come back and share all the amazing interviews I'm working on. But between now and when we start again in a few months' time, I've got this amazing show to share with you. It is the Lazy Marketing Podcast. I was a guest the other week and we had a great time talking about marketing, talking about branding, talking about value. It was a lot of fun to be part of, and I really hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did making it. So listen, enjoy, take part, and when you're finished, head over to Lazy Marketing Podcast and subscribe. It is a fantastic podcast. You will come away feeling amazing. At the same time, if you want to leave a review or a rating on iTunes or whichever platform you get your podcast on, it really helps the show, it helps it grow. I've seen a few of those coming in recently, and I really appreciate all the thanks and support that you as a community are giving. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I can't wait to see you again soon on the next season of the UX Usability Podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Temporary Lazy Marketing Hour, extremely live, as the people that were here for the last 2 minutes now realise. Today, I'm really delighted to be joined by an amazing panel. We're going to have a fantastic discussion about how creative and brand can lower cost of sales. You're going to get a lot of different opinions, I hope, from a lot of very expert people. Let me introduce them. First of all, over there on my screen is the fantastic Rachel Knott, copywriter extraordinaire. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Al. Hi, everyone.
Joining us over there is Simon Hutchings, a creative extraordinaire. Hello, Simon.
Good afternoon. How's everyone?
We're very well. All the better for having you here. And here is Adam Cockrill. I don't know where he's on your screen, but that's where he is on my screen. Adam Cockrill, digital extraordinaire.
Hello.
Hello. And last but by no means least, the man with more guitar than any of us, clearly, is Dr. Chris Parker, who is a lecturer at Loughborough University and is a very experienced lecturer in the topic of UX, user experience, and you're a chartered human factors specialist. I'm not sure I know what any of those four words mean, let alone all four of them together. Give us 30 seconds. What does a chartered human factors specialist concern themselves with?
Wow. So that sounds, it's like a chartered accountant. You know, you're an accountant, you want someone who knows what they're talking about. Wow. So if you're a chartered human factors specialist, it's being credited by the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. You've basically got to have a lot of experience, prove that you worked at a top level over a mind-boggling amount of criteria.
I would imagine it's quite interdisciplinary as well. There's lots of different...
Oh, yeah. So it's everything about the human body and how we as humans interact with products and services and world around us, the physical side. Then there's the cognitive side. So how people think, how they react to environment, how they react to risk, and how you can design to work with the way that we think to get the best outputs. And that's the human factors side, which is really where my main interest and my heart lies.
Fantastic. And on a more general level, back into user experience, as program leader for the MSc in user experience design, I would imagine you've got a lot to say when it comes to the impact of environment, or less so to do with creative and design and brand, but more to do with design and how that impacts on human behavior. Is that fair to say?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So one example of this is some research I published a few years back looking at what are your motivations to use an app to go shopping. So, if you want to do marketing, you've got to think about working with the motivations people have got. So I'm going to open the side here so I can check my notes to be sure. So the most important thing is giving efficiency and giving convenience. If you've not got the efficiency and convenience, then the app is not going to work, no matter how beautiful it is. Now, beyond that, you can go, well, let's get some personalized services around this. People really feel it's good for them. You can get some real good social elements in there, get this interacting, get the word of mouth marketing. But all of that is secondary to efficiency and convenience. Now, of course, being efficient and being convenient is different for every context. So you've got to look at how people are living, how they're working, what kind of life they're spending, and then working with your customers in that way.
Amazing. This is going to be a fantastic discussion. And I know that because I've been watching it in the WhatsApp green room. Let me kick things off by being a contrarian and throwing a grenade in the room. And I threw this into the WhatsApp group, and it definitely triggered and polarized. Does emotion matter in business? Before we even start talking about creative, does emotion matter in business? And if so, why? And if not, if somebody wants to take a contrary view, why doesn't emotion matter? Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in. I think emotion does matter. I think it's because we're human beings. Humans are running business, and humans are emotionally led. As I understand it, we make decisions based on emotion. So a lot of the business owners that I tend to work with as clients demonstrate attachments to their business, their budgets, what they're spending on marketing, what the potential outcome is. They have fears and insecurities around whether or not the marketing is going to be effective, there's going to be a return on investment, whether it's going to help them achieve their goals. And a lot of them have put in a significant amount of time, effort, and hard work into being self-employed and running that business and ensuring that they can, afford their overheads and also provide, for their family and for themselves and so on. So I think all of that is very emotional. So I would say business is generally a very emotional environment from that perspective.
But don't people, before anybody else jumps in, just to go contrary, don't people just spend their money based on what they want and what it costs? I mean, isn't price ultimately the ultimate driver? And Rachel, you're next.
Do you want me to respond to that, Al?
Well, anyone can respond. Rachel's got a comment to say next. I'll go to her once we've.
How do people decide what they want, though? Without, if we didn't have an emotional connection to if we weren't driven by desire, then, would we want anything? Would we not simply just go, right, okay, I just need to eat some food now, and I need to sleep now, and I need to, and just focus on my basic needs? A lot of
desire is at the core of it. Ultimately, it's about the nature of desire. Okay. Rachel, I could see you were about to jump in and I jumped all over it. So what were you going to say?
That's all right. Well, what I was going to say about, the initial question, does emotion come into it? I think the fact that one of the main things that we talk about in copywriting is storytelling, brand storytelling. And the reason that storytelling works is that humans have always told stories. They're a vital part of our daily communication, and they bring people together because they strike an emotional connection between human beings. When you're invested in a good story, your brain physically responds to it. You get a hit of dopamine to their brain. I'm sure Chris will know a lot more about this. That sparks an emotional reaction that helps you associate that emotion with the person that you're speaking to. And it's the same with brands. So emotions are absolutely crucial in storytelling and that's why they help build stronger relationships with brands, between brands and customers effectively.
Amazing. Anybody else got a thought on that?
Yeah,
Does emotion
I've got a thought on that, just to drop it in. So I think historically, we're all aware that people buy from people. And historically, I think we probably had more interactions with people when we're buying. However, things are slightly changing now. And I wonder whether this is a kind of you were throwing a bomb into the room earlier. I'm kind of going to throw a bomb into the room now, to be honest. Maybe we've got more buying experience with our screens than we have with people. That might not be from such a service-related side of things. From a service-related things, we probably are still needing to speak to someone about what they are going to offer us and how they're going to help us and where the value is. But from a product basis, are we more in tune just with the nature of how we buy things now. We're probably buying more and more. We're definitely buying more and more online. So does that mean there's a slightly less of an emotional connection with our buying process because effectively we're buying from a screen? That's probably a good one for Chris, actually.
All right. That's good. Actually, I've got 2 points. The first one is they did some psychological research on this, that if you damage the part of the brain that deals with emotions, you can operate pretty well as a human, but you can't make decisions. And simple things like, do you want tea or coffee? Do you want to turn left or right? Real basic things you find unable to answer. So at a real level, emotions drive everything we do, even if we don't see it as the sort of beautiful storytelling part. And when we think about buying online, I think it depends what kind of buying we're talking about. So the Amazons of the world, they spend a lot of time perfecting getting you from the homepage to making that purchase as fast as possible without thinking as much. So in that sense, you're reducing the outward emotional side of it. You're not having a great connection. You're just firing on impulse as much as possible. And the faster that goes, the better they are. That's going to work really well for the mass market. But if you're trying to make a high value purchase, let's say a car, something you're going to be really investing in, you don't want that super fast purchase. You want something where you are doing, like Rachel was saying, building a story, building a narrative, engaging with the brand. So that's really something that has to be developed. At the moment, you look at the way things are done on websites, it's not as good as it could be, because you look at your Volvo website, it's not that emotional. It's not that great. You're not really getting a great story evolving. You're getting a bit of brand in there, but not that much. So where things could go in the future is augmented reality, virtual reality, as these are some of the most powerful storytelling tools we have. Give you an example of this. When you put a virtual reality headset on, you can be feeling that the world you're in is real, and you can be really drawn into things in the way that just reading a book or seeing a screen wouldn't tell you. So what does it feel like to own a Volvo? What kind of person, what kind of life, how do people see you? These are all things that virtual reality, augmented reality could be influencing you on. So going forward the next 10, 20 years, bringing these additional dimensions into the online selling world to create really strong emotional connections between the seller and the buyer, even if it's not a person, could be incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it's almost like you remember you used to get like 3D glasses as part of like, a promotional packet of crisps or something. You used to get these kind of little interactive kind of gimmicks that you could use and be like, oh, that's a bit different. It's almost like taking that to another level in terms of technology. I suppose when VR becomes more prevalent and, almost everybody's got a headset, and it's just a case of, oh, this website's compatible with VR, pop the headset on for best experience, and then you'll have a more interactive experience with that website.
You don't see a huge amount I remember kind of like augmented marketing, if that's even the right term, was around quite a few years ago, but you had to have the right app to scan effectively an advert in the press, which would then come to life with a video or something similar. So that was its kind of basic level, I guess. I don't tend to come across that quite so much now. Do you think that kind of more virtual experiences way overlap that now?
I think it's a combination of things. So the tools to do it are still being developed. So Adobe is on the cusp of releasing Adobe Aero, which is going to be like, you got Photoshop. Everyone's got Photoshop. You can just use it to create wonderful pictures and put things in the background, whatever you like. Aero's been on beta for the last 5 years. That'll be released soon, and that will be the tool everyone can just use. The technology is already in your phones. So it's linking these things up. When that will be, 2 or 3 years, hopefully. The biggest barrier, though, at the moment is what people are using AR and things for at the moment is small gimmicks. Like IKEA, see this in your home, and you end up with a little cup of something on your desk, which is interesting, but not engaging. So the idea about bringing in story elements, narrative, about you see, like for example, you see, you want to see a sofa in your room. So rather than just there's a sofa, go right, there's a little box, and you approach the box. As you approach, it grows larger, and then there's a little button just flashing saying touch me. So you touch that, and the sides fall down, and out pops this little sofa, and it starts to grow and then move to the part of your room that you want to see it in. Then on there appears people, and they're having a movie night. I can go on. That kind of thing. It's not that difficult to do. You know, it's a bit of work, but not that much. That would be so much better than what's currently done. So the narratives are missing. The human factors design of it is really not where it should be. This is getting really geeking away from marketing. I'll get back onto the marketing and emotion things really quickly. But things like when you're looking at a screen, you've got like a 20 degree cone of vision that you can look through. That's where your focus is. And then you've got 35 degrees either side of that. That's where your perception is. Then everything back there, which you can't see, that's surprise. So where you put things in the environment depends where you can actually look at. And then you've got something here in front of you that you're looking at and paying attention on. And then you hear a beep over here. You look, attention flicks. Now your cone's changed, and etc. Basic human factors. And by chaining focuses and giving signals and bits, you can move people through an environment and get them to really feel engaged. That's missing. I'm not seeing that happening in many, if any, virtual environments. So the design side of it is a bit underwhelming. So I think when people get around to this, start bringing these bits in, all those possibilities for extreme motion can really become possible. But we're going to get back onto the marketing, which is the main topic for today. So my last thing on emotion and marketing for now is anyone who thinks that emotion is not important in business should go ahead, launch a company, and put swastikas everywhere and see what the response is.
I agree. I've actually used that tactic when people don't appreciate why values matter. People are, I think in business, we're so revenue focused that it's easy to, and I don't blame anybody for doing it, it's easy to discount things that aren't immediately quantifiable in revenue. But Simon, I know you've done a lot of thinking around and work around the ROI of design. You know, you've been a creative for 23 years, 22 years. It doesn't annoy me at all that you've still got your hair, and I don't. Obviously, you weren't working hard. Obviously, you weren't working hard enough. That's all I can attribute it to. But you've thought about this a lot. You know, everyone that's here today, one of the key things I think they're going to want to go away with. And by the way, attendees, if this isn't one of the things you want to go away with, put it in and tell us. But basically, I think they want to know how far does creative go in playing a role in ROI? How far can they go? How can they observe and measure? What can they know? Over to you, Simon.
Massively is like the short answer to it. You know, you've got one of the examples I could use is that, you know, there's a lot of pressure on businesses around marketing in general to reduce their cost per click, to make sure their data is spot on, to make sure their adverts in the most optimal position of a publication. But at the crux of it all, if their brand isn't targeted and if their advertising isn't on par and not targeted and hitting those emotional levels, it doesn't matter how much they're paying per click. It doesn't matter if they're in an optimal position in a publication, because it's just not going to work. So they could be paying an absolute fortune on their marketing, but because they haven't done any of the work on the foundation level of their branding, creative identity, all of that work, strategy, they're just not going to connect with the people they're trying to connect to. So it's just absolutely massive, and it's got to be done from the fundamental, you know, right from the very foundations as a fundamental part of your business. If you're identity and all of your creative and your messaging and your narrative and the story and all those things we're all used to talking about just doesn't fit, then you're just spending money that's not going to get you anywhere and not going to get you any results.
I just want to praise it. Oh, sorry, I was just going to add something, Rachel, just very quickly. In a world where emotion therefore drives purchasing decisions, and this is for Rachel and for Simon, and Rachel, you've probably got something else to say as well, but so you can go first. But in a world where purchasing decisions clearly are affected by emotions, and the only way we have of communicating emotion is how things look and the words we use, why isn't it more obvious that why are we even having this discussion? Why isn't it more obvious that the role that words we accept that words play a massive role in purchasing decisions. Why is it even not still a thing that people could consider that design doesn't matter, creative doesn't matter? I'll leave that out there. Rachel, you were going to say something. And yet again, I jumped in front of you.
That's okay, don't worry. I mean, and this kind of links back to what Simon was saying as well about people buying online. So I think one of the things that people are missing is if you look back to when, people directly bought from people, why did they keep going back to that same person? It's because they knew what to expect. They knew the value that they were getting. They knew the quality that they were getting, and they had a personal, emotional connection with that person. So I think And that personal connection comes from their experience interacting with that person. And what we need to recreate through, through copywriting, through great brand design, is effectively make that brand feel like a human being that they're interacting with, so they can develop a direct relationship with them. And that comes through brand experiences. So don't tell, effectively. So you don't want to force emotion. You want to bring emotion out, kind of evoke emotion in your prospects and your clients by their experiences with you, just like a normal human to human relationship would be developed. So don't tell your customers you care about them, show them. That kind of makes it sound like I'm doing myself out of a job. But actually, this is where tone of voice is really, really important, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it matters to some degree what you say, but more so how you say it. It reminds me, I saw a study about how the words you speak only count for something like 20% of the communication, but your body language counts for something like 70% of the communication. So you could be speaking really nicely. Sorry, go ahead, Roger.
No, I was just going to say, and of course, when with written text as a copywriter, one of the challenges is how do you recreate that body language and that tone in the written words? I've got an example here. It's Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier. These are two lines from an email. They say the same thing in two entirely different ways. And I think one tells the customer that we care about them, and the other one makes the customer feel like they're cared about. So the first one is, we care about our customers and value your feedback. We'd love for you to head over to our site and leave a review so that we can ensure we continue to deliver exceptional service to all our customers. There's that one. That's quite painful to read. So the other one is, you seem to be enjoying our curly hair range. We're dying to hear your thoughts. If you can spare a few minutes in between rocking awesome waves, hit reply and let us know what you think. In the meantime, here's a new serum we've created exclusively for all you curly queens. So one creates an experience. It's personal, it's fun. It feels like it's been written for that client. It makes them feel special. And the other just tells them. So I think one of the things that we kind of miss when we're talking about emotion is that emotion isn't forced. Emotion comes through experience with an interaction with a brand.
I think there's a level of expansion on that as well, though, and the level of expansion into consistent use of that language. So you can work really closely, and I can work really closely with customers to understand who they are as a business and try to reflect that across their creative and their written word. But then if they've got multiple people in the business as well, it's being able to help them to get that across in exactly the same manner, so that they're not reading one thing and then they're talking to someone else and they're not getting the right vibe off of it, because that, they're sold into something from their first experience of a brand. They speak to someone and it's just not the same. And then you've lost them, or there's too many questions being raised as to, well, we were pretty set on going with these guys beforehand, but now I've got my doubts.
Yeah, that's about consistency, isn't it? Brand consistency across the whole of the whole brand experience, and that, you and the visuals come into that as well. The aesthetics, that side of things. It's not just the tone of voice. If your aesthetics say you're one type of person, then your tone of voice says you're completely different. That's confusing and inconsistent and jarring for the customer. Like they go back to the same person because they trust and know that person. They're going to keep coming back to the same brand because they know what to expect and they trust and like the brand. So establishing, and that comes from brand personality as well, establishing that brand personality right from the start. And I know both you and I both do this, Simon. Who are they? One of the questions I always ask my clients is, if your brand was a person, what would they be like? Sometimes I even ask them, can you tell me a celebrity that your brand is like, so I can visualize who it is that's talking. We talk a lot about the importance of having a really clear target avatar, so them inside out, but you also need to know who your brand is inside out. How do they talk? How do they react to things? How do they respond? What do they look and sound like?
Chris, just kind of crop to mind off the back of that. Do you find, or have you found that through user experience, there's a different journey that someone will go to through their user experience of something, depending on whether they're used to being receptive to a more corporate way of seeing marketing versus a more kind of relaxed, quirky way of seeing marketing and the languages that are used?
Short answer, it's not something I've looked into, but it does sound really interesting. I would expect there to be a range of reactions, just like you've got a range of users. And you haven't got one kind of customer and that's it. It's always a range. So it would make sense that there are some people that respond really well to one, reward another. And of course, I'm sure Rachel would agree that you got to know when to use it. So, Buckingham Palace probably wouldn't quite do as well with the Curly Queens. Although maybe it could be something that we see going forward.
Yeah. Indeed. I was going to just ask a question around emotion and risk, because what you were talking about, Rachel, made me realise that loyalty is a result of emotion, not of logic. In marketing, loyalty is really important. We want to tap into loyalty. We want people to be loyal, because then the cost of acquisition goes down over time. If there's high loyalty, cost of acquisition goes down. So if that's true, what's the role that creative and everything else, but certainly on the creative element, and I would include words and visuals there, what's the role that creative plays in not just getting to people through that emotional decision-making piece, but through that and into lowering of risk and loyalty, which to me are actually quite logical. So the reason why I'm asking this question is, does this mean that emotion plays more of a role in logic than we accept and understand? We think we make decisions logically, but emotion is underpinning it, really. Because if the risk is high, if the emotional relationship isn't there, it doesn't matter that it's the cheapest, right? Does it? I'm just throwing that out because that just struck me as being a really, interesting relationship between emotion and risk. Whereas I always normally attributed logic to lowering risk, but now my mind is changing.
I think is it about acknowledgement of those fears? That's certainly from a copywriting point of view. One of the things that I'd always look into is, what are the objections? What are the fears around it? Because if you can get to the root of somebody's fears, then you can reassure them that you're going to attend to those things. So I think it's an acknowledgement of those things and a recognition of those things, because I think the risk is fueled by an emotion of fear. So if you can then tap into that fear and kind of put their fears to rest, through the words that you use, or not just, do, don't tell, by showing them, then I think that's, certainly from a words perspective anyway. Simon, you might have something more to add from a design perspective about that.
No, I think that's pretty much spot on. I think people are less interested in the process and more interested in the end result. So, like, from our perspective, visually, we, especially from an imagery perspective, we're always trying to concentrate on what the end result is, because obviously, you don't want to be promoting an accountant with someone looking like they're utterly stressed, because the whole idea of accountant is they're meant to take stress away from you, and you're meant to be really chill because they've got it all in hand. So, trying to avoid, you've got to kind of build in the fact that there is a problem that you are able to resolve. So you've got to touch on that, but I think the resolution and how you add value through that resolution is the thing to concentrate on.
I think that speaks very much to like you're talking about the end result, the resolution. It's features and benefits. We're talking about this from a design perspective. Chris was also touching on it from a perspective of how we could use modern technology to kind of elaborate on this, and how we could create experience which takes you on a journey that shows you what the actual benefits and features are of a product before you can actually use it. How currently perhaps web tech and websites and so on just give you quite a 2D perspective. It's very difficult, very kind of small perspective of things. It's very difficult to do that. So we can expand that through, rather than focusing on some stock photos of people being stressed out about accountancy, we can show them images of people being relaxed and happy as a result, and actually show the end result. Or we can use that technology to show people how that that sofa is actually being used and the happy family that's on it. So we can think about the experience that they actually have as the end result. And I think that even in the current technology that we have, we're not utilizing that to its limitations in order to promote that experience and that end result that can be had from a product or service.
It's also a lot of what we're talking about is very visual and sort of interface led, which totally has its place. I'm not trying to put it down. A lot of what we do within UX design is think about the whole journey. So a really common tool is start with a UX vision statement and try and work out what is the right problem to solve, rather than just jumping through to how it looks. So a UX vision statement could be, well, who is the person that we actually want to connect to? It's not everyone, it's this group. So who is that group? What are they trying to achieve in their life? Why are they trying to achieve it? And why can they not seem to do it? What's the barrier in the way? Once you understand that, then you can start to go, right, what is the narrative we're going to try and do to get these people? And how can we develop the things that they're going to love? So talking about sort of sofas a lot. Well, what people might want is a really great family movie experience. We always think of, I'm going to sit down on the sofa with family and watch things, but we can't fit in the sofa. You need a bigger sofa. Well, actually, no, you need a better family movie experience. So what is that? That's going to be, well, we're all in the same room. We're going to be watching it, we're going to be enjoying it, we're going to be comfortable, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. Right, how do you make that happen? And maybe a bigger sofa isn't even what you need. Maybe what you need is individual chairs and popcorn machines and all these things. And you can spend that into creative directions. So making things look nicer, that's really important. So copy is super important. I think everyone doing copy editing is like a wizard, and I'm super jealous I can't do it. But it's also good to remember that we've got to connect with those unmet desires more than anything. And it's not just by saying words that, oh, we do it. Actually, no, let's start with this. Let's focus on really addressing those unmet desires. And then everything else, all these skills, can do their job properly.
I think that's really important. That we've talked about this before as a group, about helping educate clients and business owners on what they actually need in order to create a certain experience, rather than what they think they need. A lot of the time, I think business owners think they need a website. but it might actually be that they need a really good social campaign, or it might be that they need some good blog post copy, or it might be that they need to go back to strategy and branding first, and then figure out, right, what's the best strategy, because it ultimately is about who we're connecting with and how we're connecting with them and what kind of experience we're providing, rather than just you need this tool or this marketing channel.
I think some of that sometimes, from a business that's in its infancy and maybe hasn't got finances, we're talking here about being very targeted and understanding the real reasons, and like Chris just said, what they want to achieve. It's a much bigger experience of what they're not to achieve, rather than just a bigger sofa. And I think, we in the last podcast we spoke about building out your target, and defining your target market and your avatars, and being able to speak to those, as Chris just kind of said. And for smaller businesses, I think they try to be everything to everyone, and possibly that's where it all slips up from the very beginning. And this is tapping into what the question you put into this group probably about 20 minutes ago, Al, about why are people not just kind of tuning into the fact that, we need to be doing this in a certain way. But it's probably because we just want to be successful at business quickly. We want to be everything to everyone. So we think that a logo or an identity or some copy written in any old way will probably cover everyone, and hopefully they'll come to me. Well, we absolutely know that that's not really the way to be looking at it. We need to be concentrating on exactly who we want to be, our champagne clients, and then cascading from that will be other people that we will be able to do business with as well. And it's being able to connect with those like that, rather than thinking, hey, yeah, we can help everyone out with everything, and it'll all be good.
Well, it also speaks to strategy, of course, and as Al, you often talk about focusing on, one avatar initially, rather than, all of them at once, or every service vertical at once, and making good on that first. So attracting the right type of client at this stage of the business for the most appropriate service, and working hard on that. Other inquiries will come in, they will filter in, but get that right, and then, move into the next avatar or service area.
So I was just giving everyone else a chance to jump in if in case anyone wanted to. I think this is fascinating to me, because I've thought about this stuff for a long time. My mind has been blown in a few different key ways. I think I always segment emotion and logic, and I'm not going to do that anymore, because actually I don't think they're separate. I segment them because that's what I was taught. And I think that creative is a great example of this. Logically, if I'm running a business, and Adam, you just pointed to this, logically, if I'm running a business, of course I have to care about revenue, because the business doesn't work without revenue. But the problem is people can't, and even me as a relatively new business owner, I can only see what's in front of me. And because there's no lines drawn on anything, anywhere, connecting emotion to revenue, that's why the world is undergoing the revolution it's undergoing now. It's only with the advent, I would say, of the internet, really, that we've got to a point where we have such scale, because pre-internet, the way we bought was radically different. It wasn't nearly as competitive a market. Right now, I can buy probably anything from any country on the planet. 50 years ago, we didn't have even nearly the choices. You went down your local shopping bit, and if it wasn't there, you'd have to get on a bus and go somewhere else to buy it, or buy it on mail order. And so now we're in this spoilt for choice universe. So therefore, of course, the nuance of emotion is flushing through, which is why Simon Sinek had his moment in the sun 11 years ago, reminding us that it was all about why. For any small business owner out there, they're probably terrified if they've been listening to this, because they spent 25 quid on a logo, and they do the writing themselves, and they built their own website on Wix for 50 quid. We understand why it's got to be done sometimes in a shortened fashion, but you've got to get back to what's going to impact on the customer. And clearly, emotion and logic are, as uncomfortable bedfellows as they may be, I actually think they're unified. I'm now questioning whether there's a difference in the consumer's mind. I think the decisions made. Someone posted a comment, Chris. I don't know if you saw it in the Q&A. It was addressed to you, and it said, you know, the theory about you were pointing out about this part of the brain affecting emotion and decision making. And they said, try that theory out by having a non-decision making day. Can you imagine such a thing for a business? Nobody decide to work with me for the next 24 hours, or whether decide for better or for worse. It's anathema to us, isn't it?
I'm trying to find the Q&A chat button right now. And
there is a Q&A. I don't know what it's called.
There it is.
Called
right.
Q&A, oddly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what that question's.
Well, the question is there a difference between emotion and logic?
Okay, so it reminds me of these experiments that were done in I think it was the 90s, which some Japanese scientists took a ATM machine, which is really boring technology, and messed around with the buttons. So you had the standard layout, you had an ugly layout, and you had a beautiful layout. And they found that when people voted the layout to be more beautiful, they also said it was easier to use. Bear in mind that the software and everything was the same. It was just the buttons that were different. And this other scientist in Israel thought, oh, that's Japan being stupid. That's just Japan being Japan. So let's rerun it and be really rigorous. So he rerun it in Israel and found really strong results the same, in that when you make something look beautiful, you think it is easier to use. So the beauty is a function. And that kind of reminds me of designing the Nike logo. You know, everyone thinks of the Nike logo as this amazing swoosh tick. And kind of reminds me of what Rachel was saying earlier. When they developed the Nike logo, no one liked it. It wasn't very good. But then Nike put it on their shoes that were very good. And people put them on and went, oh, these shoes are great. I'm seeing they're great. Therefore, that logo is great. And it earned this mythical status. So nobody can just go and design something that good. It really is hard earned.
Association is so powerful, isn't it? In this respect, in this context, it's the association of, you know, that logo with the experience or the emotional connection to the product or service.
I was trying to think, whilst you guys are talking of, right, we're all saying emotion's important, right? When is emotion not important? And I was trying to think, well, what if I want to go and buy a tool for the weekend? Well, that's pretty unemotional. I'm going to cut down some trees in my garden. Right? That's pretty functional. But I'm thinking, I'm in B&Q looking at a range of saws, and I'm imagining me in the garden, and I'm imagining me maybe 5 years' time. Who is that person I'm going to be? And everything. And straight away, I'm in emotional territory. And maybe I'm buying this really nice lumberjack style saw with a nice girthy wooden handle, because I'm a big, tough lumberjack guy. Complete rubbish. Any of the saws will do the job, but I'm imagining it, and emotion is driving the decision. I can't think of something where emotion. So I can. When I'm imagining buying for myself and enriching my life and creating my world, every decision I'm making is emotional. For those who are watching live, I can see the guitars behind me. Now, if I was making guitars for a living and shipping them off to people, I'm not sure I would be choosing the vintage cloth-covered wire, which I love. I would be choosing the cheap wire to do the same job, and I can save some money. So in that kind of manufacturing context of getting something out the door, no one's going to see it, it's just there. I don't think emotion would be important, but everything in the personal world is.
Can I just jump in on that? Sorry, Adam, I'm going to. But then I would come along and, listening to the marketplace, and they're all whinging about how cheap your strings are, I would tap into the emotion of that and launch a vintage cloth string only guitar competitor. And therefore, if I talked about that and flushed that through with emotion, through story and through messaging, even through design, I could completely push the design into a vintage kind of look. I would then totally steal the business, possibly, at which point you'd then have to raise your game. Right, Adam, I just wanted to say that. because that's where competition comes from.
I don't want to interrupt Chris's solo. But he's
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was thinking about it's all the wiring kind of inside there you can't see. So things on the outside, that's one thing. It's things that you would never get to see on the inside. That hidden part.
Yeah.
But
the customer.
I have a question.
I think Adam was next. Oh no, go on, Rachel. You can jump in. I mean,
Sorry,
I jump in front of all of you, so it seems churlish of me to penalise anybody else. So
my
sorry,
question's about saxophones, so I'm happy to wait, Adam, if you need to go next.
I was just going to say, since you've offered me to jump in, I was just going to say, what about fear? Fear is a very strong emotion, very powerful emotion, and I generally try not to make fear-based decisions. If I'm in a state of fear around something, I tend to try and step back and, evaluate that fear. Is that fear trying to protect me? What am I worried about? Worried about a particular outcome? Is that very strong fear? Is it driving my decision process? Am I therefore dropping all logic in the process of making that decision? I find it can be overriding for myself, for clients. I can take people through a process and we can get to a logical conclusion of, what do you need? This is our strategy to achieve that. This is the budget that it would take to achieve that. This is, in line with your requirements and what you can afford to spend. But then if fear can creep in, it can almost create an illogical response of, I'm afraid of a particular imaginary outcome, which, may or may not happen. And I've overthought it and I've let fear determine my decision making. So in that respect, I would have thought that it would make sense to go, maybe I shouldn't be making this decision from a place of heightened emotion, but should perhaps step back and see whether or not that emotion is being triggered in this moment. And I can actually look at it from a more logical perspective and come back to it. It's got everyone thinking.
Yeah, no, it has. It's brought the word fear into play. I think there's a very interesting correlation. There has to be. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to go and actually measure it, but I'm going to claim there's a correlation between, what we were talking about earlier, logic and emotion and fear. That triumvirate. I know that one of my old coaches talks about this trio a lot: fear, emotion, and logic, as driving the purchase. Chris, is there any data on fear in UX? I mean, he's looking.
What?
I can see.
Give me a second and come back to that.
All right. Okay.
The thing.
I think in my experience, I've regretted decisions at times made out of fear. I was too afraid to do that. I knew the right decision. Instinct as well is another thing. Being able to tap into your own gut instinct on something, or overriding that instinct because I'm afraid of a particular outcome. It's a personal challenge to find a balance with that. Reactively making a decision, so being in reaction and therefore being in a triggered state of heightened emotion perhaps being the important aspect, and that perhaps the emotion isn't necessarily a bad thing to make the decision from, but to know when you're in a state of heightened emotion or reaction and not make a decision from that place, but to come back to it when you're in a calmer place and see, okay, is that emotion driving this decision, valid and logical, and does it make sense, and being able to have clarity around that.
So yeah, it's obviously trust and value are all bidirectional. We have positive and we have negative, and we say, oh, I trust something. It's the sum of positives minus the negatives, and if the equation in your mind comes out positive, then the most positive one's most likely going to win. And I think the fear thing is really interesting. When people have a genuine fear of something, like, I'm worried my identity will be stolen. I'm worried this thing might not arrive. I'm worried my friends won't think I'm the most beautiful person in the room, or I'm worried that when I walk into the place, I'm going to look the same as everyone else. Whatever that worry and fear is, that's always going to have an impact on, are we going to make a purchase? I'm getting my chimney redone. I'm worried that the neighbour's going to look at me and think, what an ugly chimney. Well, no. So yeah, fear is very negative. Well, the question you brought up, Adam, about fear makes me think about, is there a time when fear is useful? And you can actually say, I want to give the impression that it's negative. And I think you can. but I think it's very specific cases. So you got things like Tough Mudder, the whole obstacle courses. If you marketed that as you're going to have a lovely walk in the park and you're going to complete it and feel nice and refreshed, no one would do it. Whereas if you go, you are not going to complete this, there's a chance that you might die. And on the course, there's a severe chance of personal injury. Do not do this unless you are okay with personal injury. You're trying to ramp up the fear. So people go, ooh, this sounds like fun. Even though the reality is it's super safe.
And Al, you have flip FOMO, don't you? You know, so
that's
that's fear of missing out, isn't it? That's something that you teach about, actually taking fear and flipping it.
Yeah, we specifically want to, through the marketing strategic approach we use, we want to move FOMO to the customer. At the moment, most business owners watching this have a fear of missing out on revenue, but that's counterproductive because what it does is it creates sales pressure, and nothing turns a prospective customer off than sales pressure, quicker sales pressure.
Sometimes that's wrong. Sometimes.
Well, there's bound to be an exception to the rule, but as a rule, the harder someone tries to sell at me, if I'm not ready to buy, I tend to move away.
Booking.com.
Booking.com.
Yeah. So you're going to New York.
Oh yes, and it says there's only 2 left, doesn't it?
Yeah. So 2 looks. 5 people looking at this room right now. There are 10 purchases earlier. You've got this long for this offer. They put so much time pressure on you to the point where I've made a purchase, and when I've hit buy, my heart rate's been pumping. Literally, I can feel my breath has gone really fast. I then check again, and it's
scarcity, though.
Yeah,
I mean that's because you're worried it's going to run out. You're going you perceive there's only 2 left. It's a bit like an auction or anything like that. I think, like with Tough Mudder, there are definitely instances where pressure is going to work. And they've probably also done the maths, Chris. They've probably worked out that there's a lot of time wasters who are never going to buy. So if we put a bit of time pressure on it, we'll force the people over the line who are going to go over the line, and everyone else is going to be...
Do you think we're seeing too much of that now, though?
Sorry, Simon.
It's the follow-up apology that gets you, doesn't it? Go on, Simon. Simon.
I was saying, do we think that we're seeing too much of that type of marketing? Because nearly every Facebook ad that comes onto Facebook, obviously it's a Facebook ad, but we see this massively long, elongated web page. You have 1 day and 19 minutes, and it's ticking you down, and you're kind of buying into some of it, and you're thinking, oh, I've got a day. And I think loads of people are using this scarcity tactic now. That other than the Booking.com principle where it's everywhere, and they're hitting you from all angles with it. Do you think we're kind of wising up to it a little bit now? No.
Should I go? Well, what I was going to say links into this. So I think that the reason that Booking.com can get away with doing that is because we know, like, and trust Booking.com. They've established their relationship with us already. If there's just some random, site that I come across and I want to book on, they start putting loads of time pressure on me. I'll just go like, well, no, I don't know you. Who are you to, I think that's only, you can only use that kind of marketing when you've earned the right to. I don't know. Maybe you disagree, Chris. What do you think?
Very quickly. I get done by discounts, time discounts, particularly on video games. I'll get an email come through and it'll say Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is now 80% off until the 15th of September, and I'm like, yes, it's only a tenner. I'm going to miss out, and that really gets me every time.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you look like you're going to say something. Go on.
Yeah, so Rachel, I do agree that if everyone does it, it's not unique and it will become useless. And Adam, I agree that when things are lower value, everyone's how much is £10 worth? That's totally personal, but when you perceive it as low value, then you're going to jump for these offers faster than if it was Mercedes. It does make me think that I'm worried about the future and AI, what that can bring to the game. Because at the moment, you've got things like Airbnb, where you log on for the first time and you've logged on with Facebook. Airbnb goes to your Facebook, can scrape the data, predict where you want to go, and the first 5 cities it shows you are its top 5 predictions. And it's right something like 80% of the time.
Wow.
So you've logged in, and the first thing you see is where you want to go on holiday straight away. And that's using some pretty basic AI. There's nothing magic on there. So go forward 10, 20 years. Now, we all visit the same website, but we know that, well, they've worked out that Simon is going to be really susceptible to this time pressure technique. So Simon gets the time pressure technique because he's at that point where he's ready. As motivation comes in waves, knowing when someone is at that point where they've got enough motivation to take the bait and then triggering them with something, that's magic. We're not far away from the point where this kind of AI is going to be open for everyone. It's already there. Technology is already there. People are already using it. And that scares me because I don't want powerful marketing. I want ineffective marketing so I can have more choice. Powerful marketing means no choice.
That's amazing. I just want to dial in a couple of things. Lizzie's just asked a question. What about when you're a buyer? This is great timing. What about when you're a buyer that likes to research? Some make decisions quickly, others will be turned off by the pressure of time. So that notion of choice, again, playing in there. Some people don't want a choice. They want to be told, I guess, Chris. And some people don't. What do you say?
So is the question for me or for panel?
Yeah, well, no, I was pointing at you because I'm assuming as the academic in the room that you might have a quicker decision.
For my sins.
Indeed. I'm sorry to...
But it goes back to what Rachel was saying earlier about giving companies the personality of people. If you've got a company that's constantly showing you they care and showing they respond, and it's a person behind that. It's not just a big conglomerate. It's Mike, and Mike's got family and kids, and all these qualities. Then you're going to have a bit of stretch on that. Now what are you buying? You're buying some shaving stuff, okay? So maybe you spend £2 extra because you're buying from Mike at that store and you really like the way it's done. You're gonna have that stretch. So some people will always go for the bargain basement. Some people will go for that brand thing that Rachel was talking about.
I think also you need to create content for every stage of the buying process. For people that like to research, you might be interested in finding a hotel in Manchester, so you create content that talks about the best places to stay in Manchester for that stage of the process. Then there's another piece of content for the contemplation stage, and then that buying stage is when you might go onto the website, and then there's the time pressure element. So I think you need to nurture clients through different stages of that process, and they require different approaches.
See, now I paused because I was sure someone else was going to jump in, and nobody jumped in. So we had an awkward pause. I think we're going to run out of time. Clearly, this discussion, we've scratched the tip of the iceberg, I think. I think there's a massive interplay between logic and emotion, more than I realised. I think there's an even bigger interplay with fear and pressure and everything else. But I do, if I take away one thing from this, it's that it's possible to be too nice. It's possible to sell too gently. It's super important through creative to shore up everything you're doing, to make sure, one thing that Chris said that I'm going to hear in my dreams for months, beauty is a function. Oh my God, that is powerful because it really is a function. And hopefully everyone listening will take that away. Go and look at your websites and ask yourself, are they beautiful? And are the words beautiful? Are the graphics beautiful? Is the website itself beautiful in its usability? If it's not, I guarantee it's costing you money. If it is beautiful, it's probably lowering your cost of sales, which is why we're all here. If anybody needs any help, we've got an amazing array of experts in this room who I'm sure find them on LinkedIn, ask them more questions. I'm sure they'll share and they'll help if they can. To the panel, Rachel, thank you for letting me interrupt you multiple times. Adam, thank you for letting me interrupt you multiple times. Simon, I barely interrupted you, but I've interrupted you many times over the years. And Chris, having only just met you, I feel like I didn't interrupt you enough. But to all of you, thank you for being here. Next month, before we all go, let me just point out that the next webinar, I had it already, and now that screen is gone. It is October the 12th, and we have the fantastic Carl Reeder, a fantastic author, ex-accountant, business owner, entrepreneur. It's going to be very, very fascinating. So if you want to be at that webinar as well, just go to marketingquickwins.com, put your name and address in, and we'll make sure you get the alerts. The recording will be live in a few days. That's it from me. Say goodbye, panel.
Goodbye.
Bye, panel.
Bye.
Everybody.
Nicely done. See you all later.
Take care.